the risk of sounding like the lazy person in the room, where does rest fit into all of this? Because I hear about, and maybe I'm thinking of the word work in an incorrect, or not incorrect, but an inaccurate sense, because when I hear that life is work, I think about the Sabbath, I think about rest, and I'm wondering where that fits into all of this. And I was reading some of the things that were outside, and I know the rest fits into it, and I'm just wondering if you could talk more about that.
Yes, well, Benedict has one of his strong points is that you have to lie in your bed.
Other than sleep.
Well, I guess it doesn't even say you have to sleep, you lie in your bed. No, I think rest is a form of work, I think, in that sense. I don't mean work in the sense of compulsively producing things. You know, when you're sleeping, your body is working, your unconscious is working, you're being renewed, refreshed, purified. You know, we don't get enough rest, I think, in our society, probably in that sense. And therefore, we lose a certain dimension of work. So, I mean, it's playing with words a little bit. I don't think there's a contradiction between rest, as you say, and work. Bertrand is a very active person. I think he cycles everywhere around Washington, and is very disciplined in his organization. Would you like to say something about that?
What can I say about rest? You know, because it's not really something that I knew a lot. You know, I was up this morning at 2:45. So I think what is more important is you know, of course, having the right amount of sleep is important. But I think more than anything else, at least in my personal life, it's not because you are a very active person that you don't need to take time to manage yourself. And I was very, with all the managers in the company, I was telling them that among their work, they had to include a portion of their time to take care of themselves. And this portion of the time was to help them to grow personally, to seek for themselves, also to understand better who they are. This is why, you know, promoting meditation in the business environment is important, because to develop the well-being of the people, I think that that is something that we could almost put in the category of rest. Will be also some kind of work, because you just take time for you, and it can be sport, it can be prayer, meditation, entertainment, but something that helps you to avoid to be just in an automatic pilot mode, which very often becomes the case of people that are hyperactive. They are just in automatic pilot mode, and we lose the sense of what we are doing. So I think rest is very important for that.
Okay.
I think another way of looking at it is rest is recreation, and recreation, I think, you know, in the sense of recreation, is to be creative. So rest can be, rather than using your rest time, for example, to passively enjoy something that someone else has done, to try to do something yourself, to practice an instrument, or practice singing, or to enjoy playing sport, or to read a book that you do for enjoyment rather than for study. Rather than to consume entertainment that other people have decided is something that you might laugh at and enjoy. So don't use your rest time for, you know, Benedict said, use all your time, you know, for something valuable, and so use it not, you know, don't turn on the television, but
Yeah, there's a delightful little book by someone who's not usually thought of as a spiritual writer that makes exactly this point. Winston Churchill, who wrote a little book called Painting as a Pastime. I don't know if any of you have ever seen it, but it's about this idea of alternance. Painting as a pastime. It's about what Therese would say about something creative, and also about doing something that's radically unlike what you do in your work life. Instead, if you read all day and use words and numbers, don't think going home and reading more is going to be rest. But do something entirely different, like play a musical instrument, or in this case, learn to paint. So.
Thank you. Guy, you mentioned self-care, and I think that's a very important concept of finding activities that allow us to renew our spirits and give us space for that spirit to breathe when we're too scheduled and have a lot of activities around this. It's difficult to. I think the creative process is born, through time alone, in quiet. Also, taking time to enjoy the beauty of nature. Vacation time too. It's been an interesting experience. My wife's family is very large. They love to all get together, for a week at the beach, and it's just like non-stop, activity. And as a more introverted person, I appreciate, a quieter vacation where I can exercise and eat well and, not stay up at all hours, so we've had to kind of compromise on that a bit.
Okay, are you happy with those responses?
No, that was great. That's exactly what I was looking for. Is
Right.
yeah, because I understand that you're not looking for something that's numbing, right? That's exactly your point about not going for entertainment.
Yes.
That we're entertaining ourselves to death, we're numbing ourselves to death, and I completely appreciate that point. So that was very helpful. The ideas of creation and recreation and the Winston Churchill reference. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, any other?
You mentioned this provocative thought yesterday about things that get lost, such as happiness in our life.
Yeah.
And I would like to ask a little bit more of some of the reflections on finding and putting together those pieces have been lost in our what are needed, and how we reflect on these so that we can actually find them again. I'm thinking about something which is interesting, because in France right now there is an exhibit about Osiris as an ancient story of putting together things that have been lost.
Thank you. Well, we'll listen to the panelists. My first response is it was all the fault of the Declaration of Independence, where we're told that it's about the pursuit of happiness, and I think we should recognize there's a certain value in saying we have a right to happiness and this is our true nature and so on. But in practical terms, there's probably more wisdom in the Tibetan saying that all the happiness in the world arises from people trying to help other people to be happy. And all the unhappiness in the world arises from people trying to find their own happiness. And to think of happiness as some kind of commodity or some kind of state that we should be pursuing is dangerous. I mean, there's a point in it, obviously, but it's dangerous. And it at least needs to be balanced with the idea that happiness is a byproduct, is the result of something, of a certain way of life. Seeking God, for example, as St. Benedict says. And therefore, that enables you, I think, to understand very important research finding by a friend of mine who's worked with palliative care people who've been terminally ill for the last 30 years. And he developed a way of measuring quality of life. And he said that the majority of people, the vast majority of people, will say in their last stage of life, provided their basic physical and psychological needs are being met, that they have never known a higher quality of life. So nothing shows more clearly that happiness is not a material product. Anyway, it's reflection on happiness.
I'm sorry, that makes
For me, happiness is really the work of say becoming who I am, and because I really believe that it's this inner harmony between who we are and what we do that really brings this peaceful and quiet state of mind and state of everything. So, and the way of getting there, it's I think it's very difficult if you just depend on you. I think it comes a lot from your environment, the people, and obviously when you believe in God, in how much you are open to the source of love. That's the way of
it. Probably the happiest person that I know is my younger son, Barrett, who also goes by the name Forrest Barrett, but he has Down syndrome. And he is enormously happy almost all the time, and particularly happy in social situations. He very much likes having visitors come to the house, and he very much likes going to school because he sees his friends at school. He's 20 years old, and so he's still in the school system. But he's a joyful person all the time. So of course that suggests that simplicity is really the root of happiness. And so, but I would also say that Benedict and others, certainly Michael Casey, talks about the road to eternal life. The goal of life is preparing to be with God, and happiness is sort of hardly matters in that whole goal. The road to eternal life is much richer than what we measure by this word happiness.
Yeah, happy to do that. Yeah, I mean, my sense of happiness is that it's kind of a fleeting feeling that depends a lot on externals, and as compared to joy, which is a fruit of the spirit, that is within us, and we can be, living in difficult circumstances and still feel that sense of joy, but we're not feeling very happy during that time. So I try to keep that in mind when things are not going so well. And it's the idea that our life is not our life situation. Our life situation changes, but our life is a gift.
There's a story of Dutch in Holland. In Holland, the Dutch, a very austere church, had a crisis over deciding whether the parishioners who lived out in the country should skate to work to the church on Sunday for the service, because there was no other way of doing it in the depth of the winter. So, because as they were skating, they were singing and laughing and having fun, and generally enjoying the trip, probably more than the church. And so they had, on the other hand, if they didn't skate, they wouldn't be able to come to church. So rather like St. Augustine referring to another human activity, they decided that it was okay for them to skate, but they shouldn't enjoy it. Okay, any other, please?
Yesterday you mentioned that you were going to talk today some about the distinctions and new understanding of the left and right hemispheres of the brain.
Okay.
You didn't say that.
I did. Well, it's a fascinating topic. Rowan Williams actually put me onto a book called The Master and His Emissary by Ian McGilchrist, which is 500 pages. And he's been writing it for 20 years. For 20 years. But his publishers, being wise people, have persuaded him to do a little summary of it, which you can download for 99 cents, called The Divided Brain. I mean, there's nothing new about this idea that we have two hemispheres in the brain. I think what's new about this is the new science. He's a very fascinating individual. He's a neurologist. He's also has been professor of literature. He lives on the Isle of Skye in far north Scotland. He has a therapy practice in London. So he's an interesting guy. And I think the book is really fascinating because he has used the fact of the divided brain, which we, as many mammals and birds, also have, to look at the imbalances that we've created in society, the dangerous imbalances. And very briefly, I think it all, well, very briefly, he says, that we have become too left-brained. And I think that just his argument is transparently obvious, really. And he's saying, of course, these two hemispheres of the brain don't work independently, they work together, and there are billions of little synapses, little communications taking place all the time. More connections within the brain than there are particles of matter in the known universe. It's basically our minds or our brains are bigger than the universe. So now, to me, it has given an explanation of why we have a dualistic view of the world. Why we always say, well, there's one type of, there are two types of people, one this type, that type, good and bad, hot and cold. I think that it is a fact, a biological fact, and he says, why has evolution allowed this to happen? Why has it retained these two hemispheres of the brain? And his answer is, he uses the example of a bird pecking for little grains of seed on the ground, and the bird needs to be able to focus absolutely attentively on the seed, but it also needs to be looking around for cats. So we need different kinds of attention, and these two hemispheres specialize in different kinds of attention. And along with the great spiritual traditions, he would say that the kind of attention we give to the world creates the world we're living in. So you give a left-hand attention excessively to the world, to your organization, to your business, you'll end up with a depersonalized and also highly abstract kind of organization and worldview, out of touch with reality. So interestingly enough, we think that the left brain kind of attention gives us a grasp on reality, the bottom line and so on. It's not the case. The left brain, left hemisphere of the brain, creates a representation of reality. Very helpful and useful, but it's only a representation of reality. Whereas it is the right hemisphere of the brain that deals with things as they are now. So forget your 10-year strategies, or if you have your 10-year strategies, which will pay millions of pounds to get consultants to give you, but at least, you know, really equally face the reality of the present moment. So, I mean, that's very briefly is what he's saying is a diagnosis and clearly a recommendation. Somebody did ask him, I don't know, I think he speaks about meditation specifically in the book, but he was asked about this by one of our community conference recently, and he said, of course, you know, meditation would allow and rebalance the communication and the cooperation between the two levels, the two hemispheres of the brain.
Another question about meditation. Is the word that you use, does it come to the background of your mind in your regular life? Does it pop up? Or does it just, is this in meditation?
Okay. Does the mantra, the word that you say during the meditation, does it pop up in your mind during the meditation, or during the daily life? Yes, I think exactly it does. If you read the little book, The Way of Pilgrim, written in the 19th century about the Jesus prayer, you'll find he describes this process of the prayer, in his case the name of Jesus, rooting itself in the heart and in consciousness, and repeating itself, sounding it. And in all the traditions where we have this tradition of the Jesus, of the mantra, of the sacred word, the prayer word repeated, it is described as entering, you know, deeply into consciousness. John Cassian, the teacher of St. Benedict in this respect, says, by the constant repetition of this single verse, you will come with ready ease to the first of the Beatitudes, poverty of spirit, and you will find that as you go to sleep at night, you will be saying your mantra. As you wake up in the night, when you wake up in the morning, you will be saying your mantra, even during your sleep. Interesting point. And he said, so say it all the time. So his idea is that clearly the same, that the repetition of the word leads to its becoming familiar and rooted in your consciousness. So in practical terms, we're not living in the Egyptian desert of the 4th century, but if you meditate twice a day and you see this as the time of work, then you will find while you're waiting for the elevator, you won't be wasting your time, or when you're sitting in a traffic jam, you won't be fuming, or you miss your plane, you won't be becoming over-anxious. The mantra will quite naturally arise in your heart. At those times, it sanctifies the most ordinary times of your life. And when you're sitting waiting for the dentist, or actually in the dentist's chair, you will find that it will be a very wonderful link, a bridge, as it were, through the layers of consciousness to the prayer of the Spirit in your heart. I mean, the fundamental theology of all Christian prayer and Christian meditation is that it is not my prayer, but it's the prayer of Jesus, the prayer of the Spirit. So St. Paul says, we do not know how to pray, but the Spirit prays within us. And the purpose of the mantra is simply to kind of recenter ourselves and allow that spring of living water, that prayer of the Spirit, to flow in us. Anyway, would you like to share your comments? In your own experience? When you're running or cycling?
My experience of meditation has been that over the years, the mantra was, let's say, never something that you can take for granted in the way you are going to repeat it. So I agree with Laurence that it pops up every day at different moments of life, but at the time of meditation, it's really the rhythm that is created by the mantra and the detachment even from the mantra itself that, for me at least, helped me to get into the real state of meditation.
Yes, I think for me the mantra has allowed me to practice some mini meditations throughout the day that supplement the twice daily meditations. And particularly when I might be feeling a little bit stressed, I'll take some deep breaths and say the mantra. And it brings me back to that, that feeling that's been developed over the years of relaxation and the sense of peace within me. So I found that very helpful.
Sure, those of you who are in investment banking or might be interested in an interview with Ray Dalio, founder of Bridgewater Associates, which is online, it's on the Vimeo, you just look it up. I did a conversation with him on meditation, and he describes this experience very clearly, and also adds success he's had in life he owes to meditation, which has led many investment bankers to start meditating for the wrong reasons.
What's his name?
Do the right thing for the great, what is it? The last temptation is the greatest. Last temptation is the greatest reason to do the right thing for the wrong reason.
What was his name?
Ray Dalio, D-A-L-I-O. It's an interesting perspective because he's not a religious person, but he's a very committed meditator. And he has an insight into contemplative discipline and practice, which a lot of religious people could benefit from. Any other?
Thank you so much for this lovely, so different conversation yesterday and today. A couple of things that kept popping up both yesterday night and today are attention and relationships and how practicing meditation nurtures both of those things. I was wondering, can you say some words about something that attacks both of those things, and I'm referring to technology, to self-defense and to social media?
First one.
Can you talk
To
about
something
technology and how it affects attention and relationships in our society?
Yes. Well, I think this is the question of technology and how it affects attention and relationships. I think this is a crucial issue. The European Union recently produced a report which strongly recommended that children under the age of, I think, 3 or 4 should not be exposed to screens, tablets, at all. At all. And somebody who was behind that told me that they thought this was going to be the next big medical expose or scandal, like the link between smoking and cancer. I think we are producing a generation of very young children who have had their capacity for attention changed and the nature of attention changed by their overexposure to these forms of media. That's one thing. I think it's just a kind of neurological issue. The second one is our addiction, our dependency on these devices and these forms of communication. It's an astonishing phenomenon that has become so universal, it's such a short space of time. I think there are 4 billion mobile cell phones in circulation, in a population of 6 to 7 million. But our dependency on those, I think, you just have to look around you. Where I'm staying, there's an elevator. And if I get into the elevator with someone, 90% of the time, the first thing they don't even look at you. I mean, maybe it's just me, but they don't look at you. Perfect. And the first thing they do is you feel this sort of tension. What am I going to do now? So they take out their phone. And so there's that psychological dependency and the isolation from the immediate physical environment that carries with it. I mean, that is very so obvious and so disturbing. I actually told my students in class this time, I spoke to the dean about it last semester, and said that I thought it would be good if the students didn't use their computers